This is an invisible zipper. You can see from the right side it's hidden by the fabric, and it looks like a normal spiral zipper on the back. When I open it up, it's still going to be hidden. The teeth are going to be hidden. And the way that you sew it so that it's invisible is that you have to sew right in that line here, that gap. See that? That's where you have to stitch. So if I roll this over, you can see it's in there we have to stitch. To be able to do that, we have to press it open. So I'm actually going to lower this heat a little bit so I don't melt the zipper. But you want to kind of press it flat so that that little line where you have to sew, where you have to hit the needle, that becomes more accessible. This is from the wrong side of the zipper. We're just pressing it flat, see, like this. We're continuing the adventure with invisible zippers. Invisible zippers are zippers that are practically invisible. Well, the zipper teeth are invisible from the right side, and you sew them in so that you can't see the zipper teeth, and you can't see the top stitching or the stitching either. So they are basically invisible. When we sew them on, we're going to stitch exactly in this groove here, and that is what can make it a little difficult to sew on invisible zipper. To get to stitch exactly there, we either have to be incredibly precise when we stitch, or we can use an invisible zipper foot like this. It has two grooves down here, and those grooves are for the teeth depending on which side you're stitching. You always stitch from the wrong side. Now let's say we're stitching here. Then we're stitching here from the wrong side, and then the needle, we have to place the needle so that it hits exactly at the groove, not at the teeth, but at the groove. And the groove underneath the zipper foot here will hold the zipper teeth and keep them from getting in the way. So this is an invisible zipper foot, and this is the method I'm going to show you now, how to sew on an invisible zipper with an invisible zipper foot. I should tell you, we use invisible zippers for a lightweight fabric, light to medium weight, but leaning on the light side. Dresses, skirts in fine fabrics. If it's too heavy, it's gonna pull the invisible zipper. We're going to sew in the zipper before we sew the rest of the seam. Now you may think this zipper is a little long for this piece, and you would be right actually, because it is a little long, but this is what I had on hand. But it doesn't matter, you can always shorten a zipper at the bottom, or at the end, by the way, is an invisible zipper. And the thing is, you always need about 2 inches extra at the bottom. So if your zipper opening is 8 inches, buy the zipper at least 10 inches. And I always buy them longer, they're typically not more expensive, and you can just trim off the extra. So I have my 2 pieces here. I have actually added a little strip of interfacing. That's not always necessary, but I just like to do it. And I have my invisible zipper foot. You can get invisible zipper feet for all brands of machines, and you can even get some that work for many different machines. If you do a quick Google, they don't usually come with the machine. Do a quick search and you can find them. So I have the seam or the fabric here that I want to sew. This zipper is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter wide. Most invisible zippers are, and that's perfect for a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance, because we have to place the zipper teeth exactly at the seam allowance. Let me first mark where I want my zipper opening here, like that. So we have these two pieces of fabric, and we want to bring the zipper teeth to land exactly at the seam. And if we align, I'm actually going to align up here. See? If we align with the edge of the fabric, let me just mark, just going to mark where we want to stop the zipper. Right here. And I'll show you how to shorten the zipper afterwards. So we are going to align the zipper tape because that fits 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. If the seam allowances are bigger, or the zipper is a different width, you can mark the seam line on the fabric using a ruler and some chalk, or by basting it, so that you're sure that your zipper teeth are placed exactly at the seam line. That is the key. I'm just gonna, and I could use Wonder Tape, and I often do that. And I'm just gonna mark where we're gonna stop sewing with the chalk. So I want to align, there are 2 grooves, and I want to align it with the groove that's further to the left side, so that the zipper coil, I guess is the correct name, is in that groove, like so. And the zipper can stitch right next to that groove. And because I pressed the zipper open, it's actually going to help me because it's already open here. And I'll go back a few stitches. That's going to be a mess again. And then I'll go forward. And I'm basically using my hands to make sure I align here. I make sure that the groove has the coil in it, and I'm aligning the fabric here. And then I'm just stitching. And now I'm getting to the marking for the zipper opening. I know that's in 2 stitches, so I'm just gonna 1, 2, back stitch, and that's one side of the zipper. So now we have one side is on, and we have to add it to the other side as well. Now, and this is where it can get a little tricky, because we want the seam line to match up here. And I'm just going to, again, just place a pin here. So we're going to turn it around so that the zipper teeth are aligning with the seam line here, exactly as it was on the other side, right? And that is what is going to make it close and be invisible in the seam. Again, you could use Wonder Tape, glue, you could hand baste it, which I'm going to show in the other method. I'm just going to use pins. And again, I'm going to mark my chalk. And we could even close it and then mark so we are sure that it's the same spot. And there's going to be a twist, a kind of a twist down here, because the zipper is right side up. but the zipper teeth are right side down. And that is how it's supposed to be. And now we're going to sew again. Right at the groove. And now I'm just going to use the other groove on the sewing machine. Moment of truth. And I had to turn it inside. So here we go. Invisible zipper. The only thing visible is the zipper pull. Now to finish off the seam, we're just going to, I'm going to start by pinning the rest of the seam. We have the fabric in between here. Just get this out of the way a little bit. We'll shorten it later. So line the fabric edges, just pinning the fabric. We have to finish the seam here. And one thing that can help in that is to just mark that we know exactly where the seam line is. Just going to mark 3/8 of an inch here. That's going to help us be accurate. And we're just turning this out of the way and pinning as far as we can, aligning the edges. And just sewing from the bottom and as far as we can go without getting in trouble. And of course, if this were a skirt, we would start all the way from the hem. I think this is where we have to stop. Now the fabric is starting to bunch up. So now we have the zipper, the seam sewn, and we have the zipper sewn, but we still have a kind of a hole here that isn't sewn. So there's a hole in the seam, and to get that sewn, we are going to need the standard zipper foot, because that's going to allow us to sew from the bottom, but get pretty close to that stitch. And we are not able to get all the way into this stitching line because there is a zipper coil in between here, but we can get pretty close. And we're just going to overlap, go by that for a while. And it's about a couple of millimeters outside of So here's where I started sewing. I should just have started out there, but I realized that when I was already sewing, and then went out and went straight up past that. For the final step, well, two final steps, we're going to shorten this zipper so we don't have this hanging around. And we're going to do that by, this is a plastic zipper, so we can basically sew over it. And I'm just going to zigzag over here to keep it closed, and then I'm going to snip it just underneath. Get those loose threads. You can do this with any kind of plastic zipper, including the ones we used for the centered and the lap zipper. If it's a plastic coil zipper, you can stop it, you can shorten it at the bottom by sewing across the zipper teeth and then using paper scissors, not your fabric scissors. Just cut off the end like that. And here is your final seam. You would go and you would press it open, just finger pressed it, but you can press it open with the iron. And here it is.